Hi, it's me, Ingrid P. And I'm eating some fast food pretty much. Um, Basically, what happened is that I had a really terrible day, but I actually survived it. I was at the emergency room, and I won't go too much into the details of what happened to the patients, but I I was I went on the stroke. Uh, there's like this sort of protocol that you're supposed to follow if a person has a stroke. And I went on two of those on my own. And in the middle of those two, so basically I had just finished with one. And I was like, okay, I'm going to decide where he's going to be placed and the hospitalized and stuff when the alarm goes. And it was like 1 p.m. and I hadn't eaten lunch. And then like we had to rush. What happened basically is that I was called in to a patient who had fallen like unconscious while they were talking. And the nurse had been talking to the patient when he had just come into the emergencies, and he just fell asleep pretty much. He wasn't. We couldn't wake him, and he was breathing, but then we realized that it actually wasn't a breath that he was taking. He was just doing this kind of like reflex, like this kind of breathing, agonal breathing is called, and which means that you're actually not breathing and your heart and system isn't working. So he started CPR, and I kind of dissociated. I was kind of like, oh no, the worst thing that could ever happen has happened. And a bunch of stuff happened. A ton of people were called in. And suddenly I was supposed to be the person in charge, but I felt like I couldn't do it. Thank God the senior doctor came in and just did all of the decision making, and he told me like what to do. So he was like, you check in the computer and you look like if there's any reason why he could have come to the hospital, and you just keep track of the time. And that was a good job for me because like I couldn't deal with any of the rest, so all I did was I kept track of the time, which that was a lot. It was a lot. And like I felt like I was going to pass out. I was so tired. And then what happened while I was there, while I was looking into the computer and while I was documenting the time, a stroke alarm comes again. And so the senior doctor got that call, and he was like, I can't be here at the and at the stroke alarm at the same time. He said, Ingrid, you go and take the stroke alarm. You do it on your own now. Now that you've done it once on your own, you can do it twice. And so basically I was just like sent out to deal with that. And like it said like the stroke alarm is coming in 2 minutes or something. And I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I just rushed to the stroke alarm. And then I didn't know what to do. And I had the medical student with me who was a huge help. Actually, I'm not joking. She really was like, proactive and stuff. Because for me, I'm always in my head, and like the amount of stress and responsibility that's on me, I was just like, oh no, oh no. I kept aside, and I kept calling different people, but it was like lunchtime. Or like people were, or they were at the the stopped heart, like at that alarm place, so I couldn't get in touch with anybody, and I had a bunch of decisions to make. And yeah, I found out later on that the person whose heart had stopped actually died. They couldn't revive him with CPR. So that was several hours later when I was done with that stroke alarm. And during all of that time, there was this one patient who had been waiting for me. And like basically he waited for me for like 6 hours. And basically could have gone home from the start, but I felt guilty for letting him stay there. But he was, he wasn't sick. We realized that he was fine to go home. But I felt like my whole day was just spent rushing around and not knowing. And the thing is that I'm actually feeling okay about it. And I'm going to explain why. Because I've been in this situation before during my internship. And I got trauma and PTSD from that, like literally. I was rushing around, being cold, being torn to pieces, and yet today was a good day. And the reason for that is because I could lean on the senior doctor, and yet the senior doctor could count on me for certain things. So it's kind of like this give and take of like, okay, so I'm a certain level where I can do certain things myself, but at the same time, the senior doctor understands that I can't do everything on my own, and that he is there to help me. And it's ridiculous, such a simple concept, but I didn't get that during my internship. During my internship, I was basically like left to my own devices to figure out something, and if I asked for help, I was deemed like, incompetent and stupid and whatever else they said about me behind my back. And now what actually happened is that, so we went to one of the stroke alarms, the first one, and he actually called me to his office where he was sitting that day, the senior doctor. And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble, the classic, like, we need to talk. And I was like, oh no. And when we sat down, he was like, how are you doing? And I was like, not great. I said, I'm not doing too good, to be honest. And he was like, is there anything special that happened? And I said, no, I'm just like, I'm stressed out in general right now. I'm pretty anxious. And he said, yeah, I guess that you're an anxious person. I was like, yeah. He said, yeah. He said that that's the boss, the big boss of the clinic, had called him to ask how things were going for me specifically, how I was measuring up, and what was, am I living up to standards? And he said that he had told the boss that that he felt that things were going well, and that I actually worked really well the day before, and that I am knowledgeable, that I can deal with the things that I'm expected to be able to handle. I'm not expected to handle the same level as like the people who actually work at the emergency room daily basis. He said that it's normal for me to be worried and anxious about being at the emergencies, but it's fine, because I'm working towards learning new things, and I am, just right enough, for this work that I'm doing. And so he had said this to the boss, who is the one who's in charge of making sure, he's the one in charge of my placement. So I was really grateful that he said that, because that really helps me in terms of like, just, it helps me like with my self-confidence. It helps my position in terms of like, okay, I can actually, I don't need to redo any part of my placement or anything. And I'm glad that he actually didn't go behind my back and say these things so that I would never know, So I thank them for that. And I thanked him for being such a great support, because I told him, to be honest, I am worried about this because during my internship I didn't get as much support. And I said that you have been a really good support. And I've learned a lot. Even just being with him 4 days total at the emergencies room is, really has been really, I've learned a lot, Now, my brain cells aren't at top capacity because I've barely eaten during the day. He gave me some chocolates, which is also a bonus, because my brain cells are like craving salt and sugar, I needed carbs and stuff. I was like dying. But I couldn't find the time to go deal with this, I'm also glad to know like what the expectations are on me, because otherwise I'm just like rushing around and I have no idea what is going on, because I'm kind of in a weird position of like, I'm not like a junior doctor or intern, like I know about certain things. I have certain experience, but it's experience from general practice and not from hospital, clinic, emergency room stuff, So I don't know about a lot of things, but at the same time I know certain things, And it's a weird position to be in. Sorry for eating on camera, but I felt like I wanted to, I don't know, if any of you guys are like eating at the same time, maybe you kind of find, there's the mukbang trend. Maybe you find it kind of therapeutic, that like, okay, I am a person who eats food, I'm not just an internet, I'm not a person just inside your phone, I'm actually a person who does need food to eat to survive. I don't know, for some reason I am comforted when I see people eat, so that's what I'm doing to you guys. But yeah, so I find that was such a good thing, and also I learned a lot. He taught me certain things. He didn't just like tell me do this and this and then go, He actually sat with me and made me think and asked me questions, and we came to an answer together for every single patient that we talked about, Maybe that's why we took so much time, but I think that it was well invested time. So we talked about like people who are dizzy, and what can dizziness be at, and we were talking about, the mechanisms in the brain. And then we talked about heart failure and different kinds of heart failure, and how AFib can lead to heart failure, and how some people just have symptoms of heart failure only when they have atrial fibrillation, which was really interesting for me. He actually showed the ultrasound of the heart and how that can, how the ultrasound of the heart correlates to certain symptoms. And he showed the physics around it, like how the different chambers, the ventricles squeeze, and how much blood needs to run into in order to be able to pump effectively. And he also showed me on an ultrasound, you can do a little ultrasound of the lungs, and he showed me how there was a liquid in one of the lungs, in the pleural sac. The pleural sac is around the lungs, and this patient had liquid there which needs to be taken out. And I actually got to hold the ultrasound probe and follow and look through the ribs, and he held my hand while I was doing it because I didn't know where to place the probe. But we actually found it together, and I found it really exciting. And it was really good for the medical student as well. And I think that like things can be exciting if you feel safe, you know? Of course, there's always going to be a little bit of adrenaline because like you never know what's going to happen. But I felt like whatever happens, even if I were to collapse and have a crisis, there was somebody else who could help me out. And so I wasn't all alone in these difficult decisions. And even though terrible things were happening all the time, I had something to lean on to, and I could take my time and try to use my brain to my best capacity, you know? The only problem is that my brain cells were craving sugar, you know? That was the problem. But I could do all of this. And I also got such support from the junior doctors once they came to take over. You know, the boss had asked for extra reinforcements because, like, basically we weren't managing just me and the senior doctor. We needed like more reinforcements. So the reinforcements came, and they were like, oh, hello, you know, and they were like, oh, I'm so sorry that you had it so difficult, you know, and they were really supportive. And I felt like I could actually breathe. So I think that's, you know, I complain a lot about the work situation I'm in, but there are ways for things to go well even if they are stressful, you know? And yeah, I did a good job today. That's, you know, I deserve to eat my lunch finally. The time, we are at 7:30 p.m. And only now I'm eating, you know? So yeah, what else? Also, I'm happy because now I'm going on holiday, and I'm not going anywhere on the holiday. I'm just staying home, but I'm thinking of like baking a cake and bringing it to my workplace, my regular workplace, for my birthday. I'm also thinking of going to Stockholm and eating at a restaurant with my best friend. Also, I finally went to get into back into reading, and I went to buy certain stuff for myself for Black Friday. You know, early Black Friday, you could say. And I've been thinking maybe of getting back into the crochet, and I saw that there was a knitting workshop that I might join. I don't know if I have the right kinds of knitting needles for this workshop. So we'll see about that. And yeah, I went to go to this museum in Stockholm that has there's a place, the Nordiska Museet has something about the people in the north, the Sami people, and I went to really see that because it's been around for several months now, and I think that it seems cool. So I have a few ideas of what to do, but I'm not giving myself any like deadlines or anything. I am going to be going to that therapist again, but we'll see if I keep going to him. Yeah. I'm pretty satisfied with how I actually thought of my own health and planned in this I planned in this holiday. I should have planned it earlier, but you know, I didn't know when I was going to crash, you know. So I'm glad I have this holiday. Another thing that is also positive is it's negative but also positive is that I got an email. My boss, my regular boss, sent an email to my the boss at my medicine clinic saying, "Why isn't Ingrid at the her regular clinic every 5 weeks?" Because that was the deal, you know. Because my boss, my regular boss, at the small clinic, notices that I don't do too well when I've been at the medicine clinic for too long. And the boss at the hospital is like, yeah, no, well, we can't really do that. There isn't really an agreement of how many weeks are between each time that I'm at the small clinic. But at the end of his email, he wrote, like, Ingrid has only been a great asset to our clinic, and we are really happy to have her. We think that she's doing a very good job. And so I wrote to my supervisor and I said, oh, it's kind of a weird email that he sent. Like, everything, you know, I said, like, I'm a little bit disappointed that I can't go to the clinic every 5 weeks, like was expected, like the agreement was, because the boss at the hospital is notorious for being very rigid and not listening to anybody else. But he said, well, but look at those last sentences. He said, I've never seen an email from that one guy that has been so positive about a single person. And so, yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that they were positive about me, you know, that I've given a good impression. Now, you know, how much energy do I take in like pretending that things are fine in order to achieve that impression? I don't know, but at least they don't have a bad impression of me, so I'm glad. So yeah, I made this video to brag about how great I am. How everybody thinks I'm great. No, but it is a positive surprise, and it does give me some hope that I can manage this placement for the future. So that's why I'm making this video. Anyway, have a great day, everybody.